Land Air Water Bureau presentation. I am that I am, the divine spirit, trust, expressed to do business as Land Air Water Bureau. Anu Allah, Yahweh, raised me, your brother, to deliver his and her divine message to redeem my people from the world of Satan, the world of sin, the world of lies, and the world of deception. By the end of this presentation, you will be compelled to make a lifelong decision on if you will continue to be cursed, living in sin, inadvertently serving the God of death and suffering, or repent, come into your true divine character, and serve the God of the living. This video will force you to question your very own identity. Exodus 20:12. Honor your mother and your father, or your father and your mother, so that your days may be long in the land the Lord God giveth thee. What if I were to tell you, brothers and sisters, that black people, Hispanic people, white people, Indian people were banned from land for the very reason of not honoring the great spirit, customs, philosophies, and traditions of their chief forefathers and clan mothers, and strayed to eventually become lost? Well, no more sugarcoating this divine message, because that's exactly what happened. And we have been openly participating in the greatest deception ever. This great lie is the source of suffering for an entire people, suffering from identity trauma. Every single problem people experience can be traced back to its root origins being a calculated and coordinated psychic attack by way of mental sorcery on the birthrights of flesh and blood human beings. Now, before you dismiss this bold claim, we have the proof. Warning: this video is an ecclesiastical, military, and civil alert for you all to wake up before it's all over. Download this video before it's deleted and share it with everyone you know and love. This needs to go viral. For many of you, this will be your first time hearing something like this or this type of information. So let's start by explaining to you why your church, synagogue, or mosque in the United States of America somehow never mention the facts we're about to present to you. So we're going to start with the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, exemption requirements, 501c3 organizations. This is their website. It says here, to be exempt under 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, an organization must be organized and operated exclusively for exempt purposes set forth in section 501c3, and none of its earnings may inure to any private shareholder or individual. Now here we go. In addition, it may not be an action organization. So no action, i.e., it may not attempt to influence legislation as a substantial part of its activities, and it may not participate in any campaign activity for or against political candidates. Your rights in the society are influenced by legislation and politics. Your religious organizations have forfeited their opportunity to voice the concerns of the Most High God. That's not me saying it. Moving right along, we're going to go to the Office of Management and Budget, Directive number 15. For those that don't know, the Office of Management and Budget is the executive level of government. This is their website. Office of Management and Budget serves the President of the United States in overseeing the implementation of his vision across the executive branch. Specifically, OMB's mission is to assist the President in meeting his policy, budget management, and regulatory objectives, and to fulfill the agency's statutory responsibilities. So this is the real deal. So this is the OMB Directive number 15, Race and Ethnic Standards for Federal Statistics and Administrative Reporting. It's going to lay it out to you right here, people, right now. You are not who you think you are. This directive provides standard classifications for record keeping, collection, and presentation of data on race and ethnicity in federal program administrative reporting and statistical activities. For those who didn't see, this directive provides standard classifications. So let's look up the word class, for example. We're going to go right over here to the lawdictionary.org, which is Black's Law, 2nd edition, online, and we're going to put in class. Let's find out what class is, brothers and sisters. And the word class, pursuant to the Law Dictionary, and for those who don't know, when everyday words, when you look them up in the Law Dictionary, it does not mean what you mean in everyday language. It is known as legalese in law circles. So here we go. Class, the order or rank according to which persons or things are arranged or assorted. Also, a group of persons or things taken collectively, having certain qualities in common and constituting a unit for certain purposes. So this is dealing in rank and order of persons and things. So let's do this again. Let's look up the word persons. The word persons, in the Law Dictionary, there's all different types of persons. So we're just going to go into artificial person, because that's what the classification is. A non-human entity that is created by law and is legally different, owning its own rights and duties, aka a juristic person and legal person, referred to body corporate. So here we go with this word, juristic person. Juristic person or juridical person. What is a juridical person? A juridical person is an entity as a firm that is not a single natural person as a human being authorized by law with duties and rights, recognized as a legal authority having a distinct identity, a legal personality, also known as an artificial person, juridical entity, juristic person, or legal person. So here it is, when we break this down, it lets us know that they are not referring to human beings with these classifications. It goes on further to discuss and lay out for us to know that these classifications should not be interpreted as being scientific or anthropological in nature, nor should they be viewed as determinants of eligibility for participation in any federal program. So here it is, the classifications, we just broke that down, should not be interpreted as being scientific. Now I ask you this, brothers and sisters, if you're not scientific, then what are you? So let's look up the word scientific. Or let's look up the word science, because that's the root word of it. Let's do science. Science definition. an intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. So we're not dealing in the observation of the physical world if it's not scientific. What about people and biological functions and the human body is not science? This is Merriam-Webster. The state of knowing, knowledge as distinguished from ignorance or misunderstanding, a department of systemized knowledge as an object of study, something such as a sport or technique that may be studied or learned, like systemized knowledge. 3, knowledge or a system of knowledge covering general truths of the operation of general laws, especially as obtained and tested through scientific method. Such knowledge or such a system of knowledge concerned with the physical world and its phenomena. Natural science. A system or method reconciling practical ends with scientific laws. So we are not dealing in anything dealing in biology or the study of what is real. It also says that it's not anthropological. So what is anthropology? The science of human beings, people. You see it here. It's not anthropological, nor is it in nature. Anthropology, the science of human beings, especially the study of human beings and their ancestors through time and space and in relation to physical character, environmental and social relations, and culture. Theology dealing with the origin, nature, and destiny of human beings. So let's take this all back. Let's go again. These classifications should not be interpreted as being scientific or anthropological in nature, nor should they be viewed as determinants of eligibility for participation in any federal program. They're telling you here, people, none of these designations or racial and ethnic categories have anything to do with human beings. A, American Indian or Alaskan Native. B, Asian or Pacific Islander. Here it is, all of these different groups being bunched in. We don't see any tribal designations, anything dealing with people having anything to do with organic people deriving from land on earth. Black, a person having origins in any of the black racial groups of Africa. People in Africa predominantly do not call themselves black. They identify themselves by their national character, as does the rest of the civilized world. These designations are operative in the United States, dealing with corporate, artificial, juridic persons, artificial persons. D, Hispanic, a person of Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, Central or South American, or of the Spanish culture or origin, regardless of race. Regardless. E, white, a person having origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, North Africa, or the Middle East. So here it is. Most of you within the sound of my voice are under the impression that the term white only pertains to the Caucasian race. That is a misnomer, as we see here, pursuant to Federal Directive 15 from the Office of Management and Budget, that it also deals in North Africans and Middle Easterners. They are also considered white. If you split Africa, the continent, in two, there'd be a northern half, there'd be a southern half. So the northern half of Africa and the Middle East would also be grouped into this designation as white. What do you have to say about that? Do you still consider yourself anything to do with these classifications? Let's go on. So what we are suffering from is a psychic attack on our minds, on how we self-identify ourselves, and we're imprisoned in our own consciousness, in a prison that we cannot see, taste, touch, or hear, because it deals with the crime that happens in the mind from a psychic attack and mental sorcery. So we look up the word imprisonment in the law dictionary, and it says the act of putting or confining a man in prison, the restraint of a man's personal liberty, coercion exercised upon a person to prevent the free exercise of his powers of locomotion. These designations and classifications place you within a jurisdiction that is not to your own benefit and is to your own detriment if you are thinking that you are an artificial person, a juridical person, someone who isn't real or scientific or a human being. So let's go on further and look up the word black. And this is Wikipedia. Black people is a term used in certain countries, often in socially based systems of racial classification, there it is again, or of ethnicity to describe persons who are perceived to be dark-skinned compared to other populations. As such, the meaning of the expression varies widely, both depending upon between and within societies, and depends significantly on context. For many other individuals, communities, and countries, black is also perceived as a derogatory, outdated, reductive, or otherwise unrepresentative label, and as a result is neither used nor defined. People that are intelligent know that that term is a derogatory, outdated, reductive, or otherwise unrepresentative label. It is an act of denationalization to group people into a classification and label them a color. I've seen dark-skinned people. I've seen light-skinned people. I've never seen a black person. I've never seen a white person head to toe. It's never happened. It's fiction. Different societies apply different criteria regarding who is classified as black, and these social constructs have also changed over time. In a number of countries, societal variables affect classification as much as skin color, and the social criteria for blackness vary. In the United Kingdom, black was historically equivalent with person of color, a general term for non-European peoples. Denationalization. In South Africa and Latin America, mixed race people are generally not classified as black. In other regions, such as Australasia, settlers applied the term black, or it was used by local populations with different histories and ancestral backgrounds. So we can go here to Africa, and it says in Northern Africa, the Romans interacted with and later conquered parts of Mauritania. Who? The Romans interacted with and later conquered parts of Mauritania, an early state that covered modern Morocco, Western Algeria, in the Spanish cities Ceuta and Melilla during the classical period. The people of the region were noted in classical literature as Maori, which was subsequently rendered as Moors in English. So the term black is an act of denationalization upon the descendants of the Moors. Here it is first, people. You heard it here first. I didn't make this up. This is Wikipedia. Numerous communities of dark-skinned people are present in North Africa, some dating from prehistoric communities. Others are ancestry of the historical trans-Saharan trade and peoples and after the Arab invasions of North Africa in the 7th century, ancestors of slaves from the Arab slave trade in North Africa. So here it is. Blacks are denationalized Moors, stripped, conquered by Romans. That day is behind us. Why are we still calling ourselves terms that delude to slavery? So it says color of law or persons of color. Black was historically equivalent with person of color. But what is color? What is color, brothers and sisters? Color in the law dictionary is an appearance, semblance, or similarity, I believe that's a misspelling, as distinguished from that which is real. A prima facie or apparent right. Hence, a deceptive appearance, a plausible, assumed exterior, concealing a lack of reality, a disguise or pretext. A person of color is not real. Person of color. All non-European peoples is a classification from the Romans or the British of the United Kingdom. So we're going to click and see what they have on Wikipedia for person of color. And it says the term person of color today is used primarily in the United States to describe any person who is not considered white, is a person of color, is not real. The term encompasses all non-white people, emphasizing common experiences of systematic racism. The classification and term may also be used with other collective categories of people, such as communities of color, men of color, and women of color. The term colored was originally equivalent in use to the term person of color, but usage of the appellation colored in the southern United States gradually came to be restricted to Negroes. So they're saying you are not a human being, you are not real, so on and so forth, if you take on these designations. Does that make sense? Let's move on. So the people are under a jurisdiction that they aren't even aware of. Brothers and sisters, let's wake up. This is why the numbers and the imprisonment rate and blacks, Hispanics, Latinos, misnomers are imprisoned at higher rates than every other race, though it's been proven that all peoples are equally likely to commit the same amount of crime. So no group commits more crimes than the other. So under color of law, this phrase means with the apparent authority of the law, but it actually conflicts with the law. It conflicts with law if you're under the color of a law, because the color is not real. It appears to be real, and it's distinguished from that which is real. We're not talking about human beings. So let's go into the law dictionary, Merriam-Webster, and let's look up the word black. Just a very everyday definition of the word. And we're going to specifically go down to the specific part that says of or relating to African American people or their culture. Another misnomer, African American. America is North, Central, and South, and Africa is the continent. So how many continents are we talking about here? That doesn't designate a specific people. Neither does black, white, Hispanic, Indian. What land do these people come from? What is their national flag? What is their culture? These are fictions, people. So let's go on. 4, dirty, soiled, characterized by the absence of light, reflecting or transmitting little or no light. Come on. No light? Absence of light? Connected with or invoking the supernatural and especially the devil. Black magic, the black arts. 8, very sad, gloomy, calamitous, marked by the occurrence of disaster, characterized by hostility or angry, discontent, sullen, characterized by grim, distorted, or grotesque satire, of or relating to covert intelligence operations, black government programs. Come on, does this identify you, misnomer black people? Is this how you feel when you hear the term
black?
When you hear the word
black,
are these the type of defining words that come into your mind? Well, let's move right along. Let's go right into the etymology dictionary for the word black. This is Etymon Online. This is an etymology dictionary. And it is an English word. Bright, shining, glittering, pale. The connecting notions being perhaps fire, bright, and burn, dark, or perhaps absence of color. So if that's the case, the so-called whites would be black, and the blacks would be so-called white. And this is an English term. So the English were called blacks, and the so-called blacks were called white in the classification system. The usual Old English word for black was swart. It is often doubtful whether black means black, dark, or pale, colorless, wan, livid, used of dark-skinned people in Old English. Meaning fierce, terrible, wicked is from the late 14th century. With dark purposes, malignant, no mercy, or melancholy. So we got to be careful how we use these words and identify ourselves. So let's look at the word white in the same etymology dictionary. It is also of Old English, which means bright, radiant, clear, fair, to shine. And is one of the oldest in English, being well established before the conquest. Morally pure. We have to know what these words mean. Let's look it up in Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Free from color, light or pallid in color. Being a member of a group or race characterized by light pigmentation of the skin. We just found out that that's not true. So where's the discrepancy? The executive level of government is not saying that. So the illusion is sorcery and wordplay on our mind, free from spot or blemish, such as free from moral impurity, marked by the wearing of white by the woman as a symbol of purity. So a symbol of purity is when you call someone white, you are symbolizing that they are morally pure as opposed to being evil or wicked like the word black. Moving right along, what else we got here? Okay, we did science, anthropology. Okay, so let's see how this relates when it comes to the prison industrial system. Here we have here, just for clarification, let's start at the top. This is the General Accounting Office .gov, GAO, General or Government Accountability Office, GAO, Government Accountability Office. Experts report challenges estimating costs and suggest improvements to better inform policy decisions. This is a government website as well, and it is a classification on breakdown on the costs of crimes. So before we get into that, let's go to commercial crimes, because we got to know that all crimes are commercial. Every crime committed has a financial value associated with it, and it is classification breakdowns on how it applies to people or artificial persons or juridical persons. So here it is, section 72.11, meaning of terms. This is the Code of Federal Regulations. We're going to go down to commercial crimes. Any of the following types of crimes, whether federal or state, offenses against the revenue laws: burglary, counterfeiting, forgery, kidnapping, larceny, robbery, illegal sale or possession of deadly weapons, prostitution, including soliciting, procuring, pandering, white slaving, keeping house of ill fame, and like offenses. Didn't say black slaving, white slaving. Extortion, didn't say Hispanic slaving, white slaving. Didn't say Indian slaving, but white slaving. And like offenses: extortion, swindling, and confidence games, and attempting to commit, conspiring to commit, or compounding any of the foregoing crimes. Addiction to narcotic drugs and use of marijuana will be treated as if such were commercial crimes. Commercial crimes. So there is a financial amount that is associated with all crimes. So here it is, the Government Accountability Office breakdown on these designations. So we're going to go down and see a pie chart on how it relates in real time, on how it applies in the real world to the people who are identifying themselves as juridical persons, artificial persons, and how it relates when it comes to the incarceration rates among different racial groups. You see it here, people. Look at these charts. According to the Department of Justice data, there are differences in the incarceration rates for Black, Hispanic, and white people. Of course there are. The National Academies of Sciences reported that there are several factors contributing to the difference, including higher rates of poverty and urbanization and a younger age distribution for Black and Hispanic communities. In addition, research suggests that racial and ethnical biases persist and that small but systematic biases at several stages of the criminal justice system have contributed to higher incarceration rates. For example, research studies show that even with comparable criminal records and criminal offenses, Blacks have higher arrest rates for drug offenses and are charged and sentenced more severely than whites. The incarceration rate of persons under the jurisdiction of state or federal correctional authorities per 100,000 U.S. residents age 18 or older by race and Hispanic origin. Imprisonment rate, starting out at the top, topping out at 2,000. Blacks across the board, topping out. Year 2012, that's double the amount of Hispanics all across the board, with whites being 1/3 to a half, even less than Hispanics. So why is it that the denationalized Moors, Blacks, and Hispanics are classified as the people that are designated to fill the prisons? Because the society and the classification system is designed and structured for free white persons. That is exactly why. So let's also look, before we move on, at the monetary value associated with these crimes. So there are different designations for how much each type of crime costs, because all crimes are commercial. So we see here, measuring crime's economic effect on the markets. There are estimates associated with each type of crime. I'm sure you all will be able to search this in your web browser and go over this. But here it is. You see here, meth caused deaths, 1.2 million. Value of one life, 5.4 million. 8.6 million. Total cost, 4.9 over time billion per range of deaths. So here we have monetary values associated with artificial persons. They have mathematical and scientific equations to break down the financial amount of each type of crime. So here it is, they're talking about the murder rate. Average national willingness to pay to reduce risk of murder by 10% per victimization. The estimated cost, victimization cost of murder committed per career criminal, $580,000, $36. Who bears the cost? So on and so forth. Drunk driving, mental health care associated with witnessing a murder or losing a loved one to a murder victim, $2,991. So every crime is commercial. Every charge is exactly what it says it is. This is a commercial charge, just like you're charged at the grocery store. Charge here, charge there. These are financial terms because you're within the jurisdiction. So we're going to go over to Black's Law Dictionary again, second edition. What is jurisdiction? It is the power and authority to constitutionally conferred upon or constitutionally recognized as existing in a court or judge to pronounce the sentence of the law or to award the remedies provided by law upon a state of facts proved or admitted, referred to the tribunal for decision and authorized by law to be the subject of investigation or action by that tribunal, and in favor of or against persons or arrests who present themselves or who are brought before the court in some manner sanctioned by law as proper and sufficient. It's proper and sufficient for artificial persons, United States citizens, to be shot down in the streets like dogs, blacks and Hispanics specifically, and people don't go to jail. No one's held accountable because in the eyes of the law, it wasn't a human being that was shot down. It was an artificial person. And because they are within that jurisdiction, you cannot own property. So the object is to be a human being, people. Be a human being. Find out who and what you are. What is your national origin? What people do you derive from? The presenter, A. Bay, is a Moor. I am a Moor. And here it is, Illinois General Assembly, House Resolution 0689. We don't have these problems. It says here in House Resolution, whereas the Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites, Hamites, and Canaanites who were permitted by the old pharaohs of Kemet to traverse from East Africa and later form themselves kingdoms extending from the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa, the Atlantic Islands, and onto the present-day continental Americas. And whereas the indigenous Moorish peoples of the Americas are now united in order to again link themselves with the family of nations, and whereas the Moorish Americans, being aboriginal to the territories of the North, Central, and South Americas, have formed a sovereign, theocratic government guided by the command principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice through virtue of the universal right to self-determination, as well as with the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples guaranteed in the Charter. Moors are what? Sovereign. So let's look that word up in the law dictionary. For those who don't know, because if you don't know, you won't know. And in the Black's Law Dictionary, when we look up the word sovereign actually means while that's loading. Whereas on January 8th, 1886, the prophet, peace be upon him, Noble Drew Ali, was born in the state of North Carolina, destined to become the first patriot of his mentally enslaved Moorish American people. In 1912, he was anointed as El-Hajj Sharif Abdul Ali by the leaders of Egypt and the holy city of Mecca to return to the United States as the last prophet and founding father of the newly risen nation of Moorish Americans. As a result of the 13th Amendment, Moorish peoples were emancipated from slavery in 1865. Therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 97th General Assembly of the state of Illinois that we designate the week of January 8th through 15th, 2012 as Moorish American Week in the state of Illinois. Moors, you are sovereign. You can search the legislative records of every state and find records designating the Moors as sovereign, not artificial persons, but human beings. So we look up the word sovereign in the law dictionary, and we come to the definition meaning a chief ruler with supreme power, a king or other ruler with limited power. In English law, a gold coin of Great Britain of the value of £1 sterling. So we're talking about we're being golden as in relation to coins, but ultimately a chief ruler with supreme power, as in a king or other ruler with limited power. So we formed a sovereign and theocratic government. So what does theocracy mean, or theocratic? Well, in the law dictionary, theocracy is a government of a state by the immediate direction of God, or by the assumed direction of a superstitious divinity, or the state thus governed. So when you're saying you are a Moor, you are saying that you are the government of a state by the immediate direction of God, meaning I do not come under the law of man. The only thing supreme to oneself is God, him, and herself, under the immediate direction of God. Moving right along. So what is represent? We go to court, people go to court, they say, oh, you're representing, you're being represented. Well, the word represent actually means to exhibit, to expose before the eyes. To represent or represent a thing is to produce it publicly. To represent a person is to stand in his place, to supply his place, to act as his substitute. So you are being, the human being is put to the back. The artificial person is being represented by an attorney or by the artificial person who is otherwise none the wiser on what they're saying when they're saying they're being represented. We must know what the difference is between public and private, because in the public, it's dealing with artificial juridic persons. And the definition of public in the law dictionary is pertaining to a state, nation, or whole community proceeding from, relating to, or affecting the whole body of people or an entire community. Open to all, notorious, common to all or many, general, open to common use. You are suffering people because your estates are open to common use. Your cesti K trusts are open to common use. Anyone can use it because it is not private. A distinction has been made between the terms public and general. They are sometimes used as synonymous. The former term is applied strictly to that which concerns all the citizens and every member of the state, while the latter includes a lesser, though still a large portion of the community. So let's get right into this, people. Let's get right into the Dred Scott decision. This is an infamous case and is a landmark decision of the U.S. Supreme Court, in which the court held that the U.S. Constitution was not meant to include American citizenship for black people, regardless of whether they were enslaved or free, and therefore the rights and privileges it confers upon American citizens could never, ever apply to them. The plaintiff in the case was Dred Scott, an enslaved black man whose owners had taken him from Missouri, which was a slaveholding state, into the Missouri Territory, most of which had been designated free territory by the Missouri Compromise of 1820. When his owners later brought him back to Missouri, Scott sued in court for his freedom, claiming that because he had been taken into free U.S. territory, he had automatically been freed and was legally no longer a slave. So we're just going to touch on this. I believe most of you have heard of this infamous case, but specifically for this presentation, to save time, Dred Scott was born a slave in Virginia in 1795. Little is known of his early years. Okay, we're going to get to the opinion of the court. This is the Supreme Court ruling. On March 6, 1857, the Supreme Court ruled against Dred Scott in a 7-2 decision that fills over 200 pages in the United States Court. The majority opinion is the opinion that has always been the focus of the controversy. And the opinion of the court is 7 justices formed the majority and joined an opinion written by Chief Justice Roger Taney. Taney began with the statement of what he saw as the core issue in the case. The question is simply this: can a Negro whose ancestors were imported into this country and sold as slaves become a member of the political community formed and brought into existence by the Constitution of the United States, and as such become entitled to all of the rights and privileges and immunities guaranteed by that instrument to be the citizen? So here we're talking about human rights, privileges, and immunities from everything that has anything to do with being non-white, which we see demonstrated here on the incarceration rate. Blacks don't get immunities. Hispanics don't get immunities, because immunities and these rights were specifically reserved for free white persons. Now, in answer, the court ruled that they could not apply it. The court held that slaves were not American citizens, and therefore a lawsuit to which they were a party could never qualify for the diversity of citizenship that Article 3 of the United States Constitution requires for an American federal court to be able to exercise jurisdiction over a case. Taney based his holding on a set of historical notions and assertions and provided little legal reasoning for the court's conclusions. His primary rationale for the decision was his claim that black African slaves and their descendants, i.e. blacks of today, their descendants, were never intended to be part of the American social and political landscape. The American social and political landscape deals in human beings, not artificial persons. What do you say, people? Here it is. We think that black people are not included and were not intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution, and can therefore claim none of the rights and privileges which that instrument provides for and secures to citizens of the United States. On the contrary, they were at the time of the Constitution's framing considered as a subordinate and inferior class of beings who had been subjugated by the dominant race, and whether emancipated or not, yet remained subject to their authority and had no rights or privileges but such as those who held the power and the government might choose to grant them. And it's clearly demonstrated that the rights are not being granted to the blacks, Hispanics, and non-whites. There you have it. Moving right along. More Dred Scott. I think we covered that pretty well. Moving right along. Here we go to the law.com. And we have more. So what do you think? What are y'all thinking out there? Is this what you think of when you use these terms? Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, white? Is this what we thought of when we use these terms? Chances are that's not the case. So we look up the word citizen in the dictionary. In general, a member of a free city or jural society possessing all the rights and privileges which can be enjoined by any person under its constitution and government and subject to the corresponding duties. In American law, one who under the Constitution and laws of the United States or of a particular state and by virtue of birth or naturalization within the jurisdiction is a member of the political community owing allegiance and being entitled to the enjoyment of full civil rights. The term citizen has come to us derived from antiquity. It appears to have been used in the Romans. It comes from the Romans. Who did it say conquered the Moors? The Romans. Why would they use the term citizen to describe those who they conquered? It was never intended for blacks, because it was intended to designate a person who had the freedom of the city and the right to exercise all political and civil privileges of the government. There was also at Rome a partial citizenship, including civil but not political rights. Complete citizenship embraced both. So most of us aren't even aware of the jurisdiction that we are under or subject to. Here it is, searching the term black on a Google search. This looks like it comes out of an old dictionary, and everyone's welcome to verify, but it says here again, black means pale, wan, livid, to become pale, to turn white, to become black, blackened. So here we have an inverted role reversal. It says to expose to the sun or to bleach. Bleach, what happens when you put bleach on your clothing? It turns pale or white. Also to lighten, to flash, pale. So the blacks were white and the whites were blacks. We have a role switch here, people. Free white person. Free white person in the old dictionary, referred to in the Naturalization Act as amended by an act July 14, 1870, has meaning naturally given to it when first used in 1 Stat 103, C3, meaning all persons belonging to the European races then commonly counted as white and their descendants, including such descendants in other countries to which they have immigrated. Who is free? The white persons are free. It includes all European Jews, more or less intermixed with peoples of Celtic, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, Latin, Greek, and Slavic descents. It includes Magyars, Lapps, and Finns, and the Basques and the Albanians. It includes with mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal, the mixed Greek, Latin, Phoenician, and North African inhabitants of Sicily, and the mixed Slav and Tartar inhabitants of South Russia. It does not mean Caucasian race, Aryan race, or Indo-European races, nor the mixed Indo-European, Dravidian, Semitic, and Mongolian peoples who inhabit Persia. Assyrian or Asiatic birth, or what? Asiatic or Moorish birth and descent will not be entitled to become a naturalized citizen of the United States as being a free white person. We don't need to be naturalized as Moors. It is a class system, as demonstrated in Federal Directive 15. Okay, so moving right along. What is this? Shouts out to the brother Dr. Alim Bey. It's another excerpt on his page, and it basically says we are not indebted to either ancient Egypt for either religion or masonry, but to America. But at the time, Egypt and the continent of America were one and the same. We are Moorish American Muslims of the North Gate. In America, rediscovered in the 15th century and repopulated in the 17th, was recovered Egypt and the Promised Land, or the land of the constellation of the Eagle. So we are one and the same with the ancient Egyptians, the Moors of America, by blood. So here we have from the American Bar Association, their website, a court decides who is white under the law. Discrimination against Arab Americans is widespread in the post 9/11 era, yet federal law does not generally recognize them as a group entitled to access to remedies for mistreatment. So here it is, these people are being racially profiled as a result of the horrific events of 9/11, but because of their classification in the class system, they are not eligible to be recognized for the mistreatment because according to Federal Directive 15, they are white. This dilemma is reflected in the fact that the U.S. Census Bureau classifies people from the Middle East and North Africa as white. As a result, millions of Americans experience the adverse effects of being racially stereotyped as the terrorist other at the same time that their racial classification keeps them from turning to remedies aimed at alleviating discrimination against racial minorities. Go figure. Go figure. People from the Middle East are white. Moors are white according to their classifications at law, according to Federal Directive 15 and the executive level of governments. And that's just it. So we go to the Naturalization Act, and you'll see exactly where these origins of these terms actually derive from. These are the actual laws. In the Naturalization Act of 1790, the first statute in the United States to codify naturalization law, alternatively known as the Nationality Act, the Naturalization Act of 1790 restricted citizenship to any alien being a free white person who had been in the U.S. for 2 years. In effect, it left out indentured servants, slaves, and most women. This implied that Black and later Asian immigrants were not eligible to be naturalized, but it said nothing about the citizenship status of non-white persons born on American soil. Subsequent 19th century legislation included a racial requirement for citizenship. It was one of the several early immigration laws that shaped the framework and outcome of the Oswald versus United States case in 1920. So one became an American by choice, not by descent, through a common commitment to the doctrine of natural rights. So here we have a role reversal. Here we have Britons or Europeans coming amongst the shores of the indigenous people of this land, redesignating, reclassifying these people as being artificial juridic persons with no entitlement rights, label themselves as the free white persons, and put everyone else into a classification and a status that diluted to being the underbelly class of the society. through these crimes against humanity. This is not to say that white, the term white as a racial group, is not also an artificial person. But within the system of classification, it is the upper echelon out of all of the different classifications of artificial persons. However, when we go back to the Webster's Dictionary of 1828, when we look up the word American, it says a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginals or copper-colored races founded here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. The name American must always exalt the pride of patriotism, says Washington. So here it is. We have a role reversal here. We have the whites being black, the blacks becoming whites, the Europeans becoming American, and the Americans becoming persons, artificial persons, dead at law, with no standing and no status to assert heirship or claims to rights of human beings, and are specifically in the classification and status of what is known as civer liter mortuus. I believe I spelled that correctly. I have a lot of tabs up, so excuse me here as we come to a close. Just wanted to touch bases on this before we close and let the people know that this is a law term that specifically means you have no rights. The sorcery and the wordplay that is used upon us has us claiming to be that which enslaves us. When we fill out these forms, when we fill out these classifications, when we check these boxes, there's no one standing over us telling us what racial classification we are. This is something that happens within the mind, thus spawning and inspiring this demonstration here today to let the people know you are not who you think you are. Did you know that you were considered an artificial person just by claiming to be white, Indian, black, Hispanic, Asian? Did you know that it meant a classification? Did you know that it meant that you were not a human? Did you know that it meant that you are a part of Satan's lie? Did you know that it allowed the police and the government to lock you up for committing the great sin of denying your heirship, denying your forefathers, denying your foremothers? It is a great sin to take on titles that delude to slavery. And this is precisely the source of our suffering. This is precisely why the people are mistreated the way that they are. And everyone's marching and praying, and there's no results because no one changed their status. No one corrected the problem. So people are walking around in a prison that they can't see, taste, touch, or smell because there is a political issue that follows them like a shadow throughout all of their decisions in life. And most never discover what the true source of their suffering actually is. So we're here. Land, Air, Water Bureau is here to let the people know that there is a remedy, people. Your rights are protected. It just requires for you to come into your own consciousness and recognize, first and foremost, that your status currently is dead. If you're designated as any of the terms outlined on Federal Directive 15, which is American Indian, Alaskan Native, Asian or Pacific Islander, Black, not of Hispanic origin, the United States. And you are a person of color, which is distinguished from that which is real. And civil liter mortuus means civilly dead. Dead. Dead in the view of the law. The condition of one who has lost his civil rights and capacities and is accounted dead in law. You are presumed to be dead in law because you are not a human, thus justifying what everyone is complaining about with the incarceration rate and the brothers and sisters being shot down in the streets like animals. Because when it comes to law, you are in a dead status. Again, brothers and sisters, Land, Air, Water Bureau is here to correct the problem. We have a remedy for all of the misnomers because all of you are children of Anu, Allah, Yahweh. All of you can be traced back to being a descendant of the Most High God, creator of the universe. We have the process to correct the problem, people, for you to come back into the constitutional fold of government and have all of your human rights restored. If you would like to find out more, visit our website, landairwaterbureau.com. You can also email us at landairwater3@gmail.com. That's landairwaterbureau.com or landairwater3@gmail.com. It's been a pleasure sharing this information with you all. Please wake up. Share this information with everyone you know and love. Like, subscribe, and share. Leave us some comments. We got the conversation going. We're here to make you think. You are not who you think you are. Let's find out and discover and correct this problem. We look forward to hearing from you all.